A woman with no friends, the last part. There's a moment in every woman's life when she sits with the silence, and for the first time she notices that it is not peaceful, it is heavy. It's the kind of silence that isn't about solitude but about absence. A woman with no friends carries a weight that others don't always see. She moves through the world as if everything is fine. Work, responsibilities, errands, but in the quiet moments, there is a hollow space where connection should be. It is not that she doesn't want friendship. It's that somewhere along the way, the doors to it have been locked, whether by circumstance, betrayal, or simply life pulling her in a direction where people faded away. So she builds armor. She tells herself she doesn't need anyone, that friendships are overrated, that she is better off alone. But inside there is a different truth. A quiet longing, not for dozens of people, not for forced socializing, but for just one or two souls who truly see her. And here's the part that matters. That longing is not weakness, it is human. The hard part is that connection requires risk. It means stepping out of isolation even when it feels safer to stay hidden. It means being brave enough to send the text, to say, hey, I miss you, or to show up at that event even when your brain whispers, they don't really want you there. It's about choosing vulnerability over comfort again and again. Healing is never loud. It is small, quiet acts of courage, like making eye contact, asking someone to coffee, or simply allowing yourself to be seen little by little. But here's the most beautiful part. The deepest friendships are not about being perfect. They're about being real. They don't require you to be more interesting, more successful, or more put together. They just require you to show up as you are. And maybe, just maybe, the last part of this story isn't about being a woman with no friends. Maybe it's about becoming a woman who chooses to believe, despite the past, despite the fear, that she is worthy of connection, because she is, because we all are. And that changes everything. There's a difference, a profound and life-altering difference between being alone and feeling lonely. Solitude is a choice. It is the quiet space we carve out for ourselves when we need rest, reflection, or simply a break from the noise of the world. It is intentional, it is nourishing, it is the stillness that allows us to hear our own thoughts, to reconnect with ourselves, to breathe without the weight of expectation pressing down on us. Solitude is the cup of coffee enjoyed in silence, the long walk taken without distraction, the book read with no interruptions. It is the moment of peace where we are alone but not abandoned, where we are with ourselves, and that is enough. Loneliness, though, is something different. It is not chosen, it is felt. It is the absence of meaningful connection, the hollow ache of wanting to be seen, heard, and valued, but feeling invisible instead. Loneliness isn't about being physically alone. You can feel it in a crowded room, in a marriage, even in the middle of a conversation. It is the deep-rooted sense that you are not truly known, that even if you disappeared, no one would really notice. And here's the tricky part. Loneliness doesn't always show itself in obvious ways. It doesn't always look like someone sitting alone in a dark room longing for company. Sometimes loneliness is wrapped in busyness. It's the woman who fills every hour with work, errands, obligations, who stays so occupied that she never has to sit still long enough to feel the emptiness creeping in. Sometimes loneliness wears a smile. It's the woman who is surrounded by people but feels like she has no one to truly turn to when she needs to be honest, when she needs to break down, when she needs someone to say, I've got you. And then there's the most heartbreaking form of loneliness, the kind that happens slowly over time, the kind that sneaks up on you after years of prioritizing everything and everyone else. It's waking up one day and realizing that while you have acquaintances, coworkers, and casual friendships, you don't have deep, soul-filling connections anymore. That you don't have the person you can call in the middle of the night, that you don't have someone who checks in on you just because. The good news, loneliness is not a life sentence. The hardest part is admitting it to yourself first and foremost. Because to say, I feel lonely, is to acknowledge that something is missing. And when we name something, we give ourselves permission to change it. It starts with small steps, with recognizing that loneliness doesn't mean you are broken or unlovable. It means you are human. It means you crave what every person craves: connection, love, belonging. And those things are still possible. They are always possible, but they require something that for many of us is terrifying: vulnerability. They require us to step out of our comfort zones, to take the risk of reaching out, of showing up, of saying, hey, I miss you, or even more bravely, I need a friend. Solitude strengthens us. It gives us space to reflect and heal, but loneliness is a signal. It's our soul's way of telling us that we were never meant to do this life alone. And the moment we recognize that, the moment we dare to reach beyond our loneliness, that's when everything begins to change. Disconnection is a weight we carry even when we don't realize it. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come with flashing lights or a warning label. Instead, it settles in quietly, weaving itself into the fabric of our daily lives. It's the kind of heaviness that isn't obvious until one day we stop and wonder why we feel so exhausted, why life feels a little harder than it should, why joy seems muted and distant. Disconnection doesn't always come in the form of dramatic isolation. It isn't just the woman who sits alone at lunch, who has no contacts in her phone, who spends every weekend in solitude. No, disconnection is far more subtle. It is the woman who goes through the motions of life, surrounded by people, but never truly with them. It is the mother who gives everything to her children but has no deep conversations with another adult. It is the professional who excels at work but has no one to call when she gets home. It is the woman who scrolls through social media, seeing snapshots of other people's friendships, other people's laughter, other people's belonging, and wonders why she feels so distant from that kind of connection. Disconnection is sneaky because on the surface, life can look full. We have obligations, we have conversations, we have people we interact with, but surface level interactions don't fill the void that true connection does. You can be around people all day and still feel utterly alone. And here's the hardest part. The longer we carry this weight, the more we start to believe it's normal. We get used to the ache of loneliness. We convince ourselves that we don't need deep friendships, that we're too busy, that we've outgrown the need for connection. We tell ourselves that this is just the way life is, full of responsibilities but lacking in real intimacy. But there's a cost to this disconnection. When we live without meaningful relationships, without people who truly see us and accept us as we are, we start to lose pieces of ourselves. We start to believe that our feelings, our struggles, our stories aren't worth sharing. We start to filter our experiences, only showing the polished, socially acceptable parts while hiding the messy, vulnerable truths. And over time, this erodes our sense of self. We are wired for connection. It's not just a sentimental idea, it's a biological fact. Studies show that loneliness and disconnection are as harmful to our health as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. It increases stress, weakens our immune system, and can even shorten our lifespan. And yet, in a world where we are more connected than ever through technology, true emotional connection is becoming a rare, and precious thing. So what do we do? How do we lighten the weight of disconnection? First, we acknowledge it. We recognize that just because we have people around us doesn't mean we feel connected. We get honest with ourselves about the difference between knowing people and feeling known. Then we take small, intentional steps toward connection. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as reaching out to an old friend, asking someone how they're really doing and being willing to listen to the real answer. Showing up in conversations with honesty instead of surface level pleasantries. Saying yes when someone invites us somewhere, even when the urge to stay home feels safer. And perhaps most importantly, we remind ourselves that we are worthy of connection. That we don't have to be more interesting, more successful, or more put together to be loved. That our need for deep, meaningful relationships is not a flaw, it's part of what makes us human. Disconnection is heavy, but the beautiful thing about connection, it doesn't just lighten the load, it reminds us that we were never meant to carry it alone. Every woman who has known loneliness, heartbreak, or rejection understands this truth. At some point, we start building armor. Not the kind of armor you can see, not steel plates or heavy shields, but an invisible kind. A protective layer made up of silence when we want to speak, distance when we crave closeness, and an unspoken rule that says, don't let them see too much of you. We build this armor because at some point the world taught us that it wasn't safe to be open. Maybe it was a friendship that ended suddenly, leaving us questioning our worth. Maybe it was a betrayal that cut so deep we promised ourselves we'd never be that vulnerable again. Maybe it was simply years of small disappointments, texts left unanswered, invitations declined, the feeling of always being the one who cared more. So we learned that if we don't expect too much, we can't be let down. If we don't open up, we can't be hurt. If we don't get too close, we won't feel the sting of disconnection. The problem is armor doesn't just keep the pain out. It also keeps the love out. When we build walls around ourselves, we think we're protecting our hearts, but what we're really doing is isolating them. We stop letting people in, we stop asking for help, we start believing that being independent means never needing anyone. We become masters of self-sufficiency, telling ourselves that we're fine, that we don't need deep friendships, that we're better off on our own, and for a while this might even feel like strength. But here's the truth no one talks about. Armor is heavy. It weighs us down in ways we don't always notice until one day we realize how tired we are, not just physically, but emotionally. We realize that while we may have avoided heartbreak, we've also avoided the kind of joy that comes from true connection. We realize that while we may have kept ourselves safe, we've also kept ourselves lonely. So what do we do? How do we begin to lay down the armor we've carried for so long? It starts with small acts of bravery. It starts with allowing ourselves to trust again, even if it's just one person at a time. It starts with speaking honestly instead of saying, I'm fine, when we're really not. It starts with showing up for people even when vulnerability feels like a risk. It starts with choosing connection over comfort, because comfort zones might feel safe, but they are also where loneliness thrives. And most of all, it starts with believing that we are worthy of love and belonging, not because we are perfect, not because we have it all together, but simply because we are human. The armor we wear was built to protect us, but in the end, it only keeps us from the very thing we need most, each other. If disconnection is the gap between us and the relationships we long for, then vulnerability is the bridge that allows us to cross it. But let's be honest, vulnerability is terrifying. It feels like standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down into the unknown. It means exposing parts of ourselves that we've spent years protecting. It means saying, here I am. In all my messy, imperfect humanity, will you still choose me? And that question, that fear of not being chosen, is what keeps so many of us from ever stepping onto the bridge. Because vulnerability is not just about sharing our joys and triumphs. It's about letting people see the parts of us that aren't polished, the parts that carry hurt, fear, and doubt. It's admitting that we don't have it all figured out, that we need help, that we want connection but don't always know how to reach for it. For so many women, vulnerability feels like a risk too great to take. Maybe you've been let down before, trusted someone with a piece of your heart only to have them mishandle it. Maybe you've shared your truth and been met with silence, or worse, judgment. Maybe you've convinced yourself that needing people makes you weak, that independence is the highest form of strength. But here's the truth. Vulnerability is not weakness, it is courage. It takes strength to be the first one to say, I miss you. It takes bravery to show up and say, I'm struggling. It takes resilience to tell someone I care about you without knowing if they will say it back. Vulnerability is the most courageous thing we can do because it opens the door to real, meaningful relationships, the kind that don't just exist on the surface, but go deep into the places where we are truly seen and known. Think about the people you feel closest to in your life, the ones you trust, the ones who feel like home. Chances are those relationships didn't become strong because you only shared the good parts of yourself. They became strong because at some point someone let down their guard, someone let you in, someone said, this is who I really am, and you met them with understanding. That is how connection is built, not through perfection, but through honesty. And yet many of us stay on the sidelines waiting for someone else to take the first step. We tell ourselves, I'll be open when I know I can trust them. But trust doesn't appear out of nowhere. It is built brick by brick through small acts of vulnerability. It grows in the moments when we show up for each other, when we share a little more than we're comfortable with, when we allow ourselves to be human instead of trying to be invulnerable. So how do we start? How do we step onto the bridge of vulnerability when every instinct tells us to stay safely behind our walls? We start small. We let ourselves be just a little more open than usual. We answer honestly when someone asks how we're doing. We share a struggle with a trusted friend. We say, I feel lonely, instead of pretending we're fine. We practice being real even when it feels uncomfortable. And when we do, something incredible happens. We find that vulnerability doesn't push people away, it pulls them closer. It gives them permission to be vulnerable too. It deepens our relationships in ways that no amount of pretending or perfection ever could. Healing is never one big dramatic moment. It is not a grand declaration or a single breakthrough that suddenly makes everything okay. Healing doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't come in a straight line. Healing happens in small, almost invisible steps. And that can be frustrating, especially when the weight of loneliness or emotional pain feels overwhelming. When you're standing in a place of disconnection, of heartbreak, of loss, you want to fix it now. You want to wake up tomorrow and feel different, lighter, whole again. But real healing doesn't work that way. Healing is slow, it is quiet, and it often begins in ways we don't even notice at first. It begins the moment you decide that you don't want to carry this pain forever. The moment you acknowledge, I am lonely, I am hurting, I need something to change. That alone is a powerful step, because so many of us stay stuck in pain simply because we never admit that we're in it. And after that first step, the next ones are often small, almost unremarkable acts of courage. It's sending the first text after months or years of silence. It's saying yes when someone invites you somewhere, even when your instinct is to say no. It's making eye contact, offering a genuine smile, opening the door just slightly for connection. It's taking a deep breath and sharing something real in a conversation instead of sticking to small talk. It's forgiving yourself for the times you withdrew, for the times you let friendships fade, for the times you didn't know how to reach out. Healing doesn't happen all at once, but every small step matters. Because every small step is proof that you are still trying, still choosing connection, still believing that something better is possible. And some days, the only step you can take is being gentle with yourself. Some days, healing looks like rest. It looks like turning off the inner voice that tells you you're not enough. It looks like allowing yourself to grieve what was lost. Friendships that faded, people who left, the years you spent feeling unseen. It looks like giving yourself permission to feel sadness without letting it convince you that this is where your story ends. Because healing is not about erasing the past. It's about learning to carry it differently. It's about realizing that even if you've been hurt, even if you've been alone for a long time, connection is still possible. Love is still possible. Change is still possible. But only if you take the first small step. And then another and another until one day, without even realizing it, you look back and see how far you've come. There's a kind of loneliness that comes from not having deep connections with others. But there is another more profound loneliness, the kind that comes from being disconnected from yourself. It is possible to be surrounded by people and still feel like you don't belong. It is possible to have friends, a family, a full calendar, and still feel a deep, aching emptiness inside. Because true belonging isn't just about being accepted by others, it's about belonging to yourself first. What does that mean? It means standing in who you are fully and unapologetically, even when it makes other people uncomfortable. It means no longer shape-shifting to fit in, no longer twisting yourself into a version of who you think you should be, just to be loved, just to be chosen, just to be enough. For so many of us, the need to belong has been a driving force in our lives. From the time we were little, we learned to adapt. We learned to read the room, to sense what was expected of us, to figure out who we needed to be accepted. We learned that certain behaviors, certain emotions, even certain parts of ourselves were too much or not enough, so we buried them. We became experts in being what others needed us to be, but when we abandon ourselves for the sake of belonging to others, we don't truly belong anywhere. Because the version of us that people accept isn't the real us. It's the polished, curated, edited version. And deep down, we know it. And that's why even in the presence of others, we still feel alone. True belonging starts when you stop asking the world for permission to be yourself. It begins when you stop apologizing for who you are, when you stop seeking external validation as proof of your worth. It begins when you start listening to your own voice instead of the voices that tell you who you should be. But this is easier said than done, isn't it? Because belonging to yourself means risking rejection. It means choosing authenticity over approval. And for many of us, approval has been our safety net for a long, long time. So how do we begin? One, stop betraying yourself for the sake of acceptance. How many times have you said yes when your heart was screaming no? How many times have you laughed at something that didn't feel funny, agreed with something that didn't sit right with you, swallowed your words instead of speaking your truth? These small betrayals add up. Every time you silence yourself to fit in, you send yourself the message, your voice doesn't matter, your needs don't matter, other people's approval is more important than your truth. But what if instead You started honoring yourself. What if you started trusting your own voice? What if you said no when you meant no? What if you stopped filtering yourself for fear of being judged? It would be uncomfortable at first. Some people might not like it, but the people who truly see you, who truly value you, not just the version of you that makes them comfortable, will stay. And you will finally feel at home within yourself to know that you are already enough. So many of us live with the quiet belief that we are not enough, not interesting enough, not smart enough, not lovable enough. We think when I lose weight, when I achieve more, when I become more confident, then I'll be worthy. But what if you are already worthy? What if there is nothing to prove? When you belong to yourself, you stop chasing love and validation as if they are things you must earn. You realize that the right people will love you as you are, and the ones who don't, they were never meant for you in the first place. 3, find joy in your own company. There is something powerful about learning to enjoy your own presence. When you no longer fear being alone, you stop settling for relationships that drain you. You stop clinging to friendships that feel one-sided. You stop looking for external connection to fill an internal void. Instead, you learn to take yourself on walks, to sit with your thoughts, to be comfortable in your own skin. You learn that your own company is enough, that you don't need to be surrounded by people to feel whole. And from this place of self-belonging, relationships become something you choose, not something you need to feel complete. You connect with others from a place of fullness, not from emptiness. 4, accept that not everyone will understand you. One of the hardest things about belonging to yourself is accepting that some people won't like the real you. Some people will be uncomfortable with your growth. Some will question your choices. Some will prefer the version of you that stayed small, agreeable, and easy to manage. Let them go. The moment you stop trying to please everyone is the moment you become truly free. Not everyone will understand your journey, and they don't have to. What matters is that you do. What matters is that you wake up each day knowing that you are living in alignment with who you are, not who the world expects you to be. The power of self-belonging. When you belong to yourself, you stop chasing people who don't see your worth. You stop apologizing for taking up space. You stop allowing loneliness to convince you to settle for less than you deserve. Because true belonging isn't about fitting in. It's about standing fully in who you are and knowing deep in your bones that you are enough exactly as you are. At the heart of it all, loneliness, connection, vulnerability, healing, and belonging is one undeniable truth. We all want to be seen, heard, and valued. We want to know that we matter, that our presence in this world is meaningful, that we are loved not for what we do or how we perform, but simply for who we are. But true connection cannot exist without courage. It cannot grow in the presence of walls and the weight of arms.